trick that people typically use to essentially create more of a burning sensation, which makes people feel like it's doing more than it actually is. So although Caroline and Pamela in this instance are actually kind of similar, which is shocking to say, and I know some of you won't like to hear that, a type of video I haven't done for quite some time now, but a video that is no doubt going to annoy some people for whatever reason that may be, because we're going to be talking about two known individuals, and we're going to be comparing two similar home workouts. First one's going to be Pamela and her 50-minute booty workout, low impact, knee friendly, no squats, no jumps, no equipment. And of course the fan favorite, Caroline, calisthenics, glutes and hamstrings workout, body weight only. What I'm going to do here is present an opinion, and I'm going to compare two similar workout videos and do so in a manner that shows you good and bad, essentially. This is something I would maybe not prefer, and this is why. This is something I would prefer, and this is why. To hopefully educate you in the world of workouts. So we're going to start with Pamela. And you can see we're going straight into a standing kickback variation of sorts. The reason why I'm not a massive fan of this and will consider this maybe a less effective movement is, quite frankly, there is no resistance. Your body weight here is not going to be challenging enough for very long. And if it is challenging, it's cool. I'm glad it is for now, but it won't be forever. It's really hard to kind of push overload on this, especially if you're actively promoting this as no equipment. Therefore, what you're going to achieve from this is actually not a lot. And you'll see a common theme throughout this workout is, and you'll see this in the comments as well, that actually favors one side heavily at a time before then going over to the other side. That's a bit of a trick and a tip that these creators may often use to almost give the illusion of something being more effective than it actually is. And what they do there is, because they favor just a lot of work on one side at a time with little or no rest, that then encourages a lot of lactic acid buildup, a lot of burning you'll feel in the muscles. Your glutes will be really hurting, your thighs will be really hurting, and you're thinking, wow, this must be doing something. And I preach this often, but just because it's hurting doesn't necessarily mean it's working effectively. And what I mean by that is you can make most things hurt without really providing any relevant stimulus. If I were to contract my chest, for example, really squeeze my pecs together, make them really tense and contracted for a period of time, after a while I'm going to fatigue, and that's going to be, wow, it's bloody painful, that's going to be sore. But I haven't actually achieved anything from that. I've not really actually encouraged any stimulus, therefore it hurts, but it's not really working effectively. And that's kind of what we see here, favoring one side back to back to back movements, let's say 2, 3, 4, 5 movements all in one go before then shifting over. You get a lot of burning, but you're not really achieving a lot. And the issue I also have with workouts like this, which I have kind of mentioned about Pamela before, is a lot of the movements don't really do what they claim. A hamstring curl, for example, one of the primary functions of the hamstrings here is essentially bending the knee. Sure, you are bending the knee. Is it against any real resistance? No. Therefore, is it really encouraging the hamstrings to do anything? Not really, no. And again, we look at that and we essentially identify, well, no, these aren't effective movements. But again, that is arguable based on what you deem to be effective. If you're looking at, like I said, adopting more of a toned look through maybe building a bit of muscle and losing a bit of fat, you're not really going to build much muscle doing this at all. But you may lose a little bit of fat purely because you are being more active. If you compare these movements to simply sitting at home doing nothing, you are going to burn more calories doing this because you are more active and moving more. Therefore, it may help put you in a calorie deficit, which in turn will help you maybe lose a little bit of fat. But in the world of home workouts, I look at workouts like this and I say, you know what, this is probably a okay, better than nothing starting point for somebody who is not very active. In the new year, TFNL coaching prices will go up. So if you are interested or have even thought about at any point working with me on an online coaching basis where I can help coach you towards your goals, wherever you are in the world, whatever those goals may be, within reason obviously, now is the prime time to fill in the application form link down below and just express interest, because if you book in a free consultation call with me before that price increase date, then you don't get impacted whatsoever and you can skip it. It does make sense just to even hop on for a free call and just chat some waffle with me for half an hour. And then we flip over to a workout I typically deem to be a little bit more effective from a creator that I'm personally more of a fan of, which is Caroline. And someone's going to pipe up in the comments saying, "Oh, you're bashing Caroline as always." Don't think I ever have. I've always stated in every video I'm a massive fan of her, but people will still complain that I apparently am not. People often actually leave comments without watching videos, which is quite funny. So we see Caroline, similar movement, which quite, to be honest, I'm not going to favour her here. I'm not a massive fan of this movement, but I understand, as with Pamela, when you are limited to body weight, there's only so much you can do, but at least the range of motion is tolerably better. There's a greater range of motion here, which means you're going to lengthen the muscle a little bit more, you're going to shorten the muscle a little bit more. Is it still a massively effective movement? Not entirely, because again, how do you do better? How do you progressively overload this? Which is essentially, how do you make this harder as you get stronger? So you would typically add more weight or add more reps, but you can only add reps to a certain point. Similar to what Pamela's done, you'll notice Caroline is very much favouring one side for a bit before then going to the other side. Again, a tip trick that people typically use to essentially create more of a burning sensation, which makes people feel like it's doing more than it actually is. So although Caroline and Pamela in this instance are actually kind of similar, which is shocking to say, and I know some of you won't like to hear that, the one thing I can give Caroline to favour here in this situation is the fact that her range of motion is slightly better, and how she is performing movements is slightly better too. But then Caroline actually shifts over to far more effective movements, but she's being a little bit more creative. She's doing a unilateral hip thrust here, and she's using a chair to support herself in performing this hip thrust. The hip thrust is a fantastic shortened position glute movement, a really good one actually, and doing it unilaterally does make it a little bit harder, which in turn can help kind of mitigate the issues you may face when not having enough weight overload, because if you do both legs at the same time bilaterally, you will obviously need a lot more weight. If you do things unilaterally, being one side at a time, you're not going to need as much to push, because again, all of that emphasis is being put through one leg rather than both. And again, in fairness, not a bad shortened position glute movement. The issue with this is that it's a very limited range of motion, and that is a bit troublesome. If you were able to elevate yourself and actually be able to take this through more of a range of motion, it would definitely be better. But with the consideration you're at home and you do not have anything, I do understand this and I do respect it. The big thing you'll see between the two creators here is that Pamela's movements were very simple, which I appreciate, maybe not particularly thought out and kind of samey. Caroline's movements a little bit more complex, a little bit more considered, and although maybe not the best due to limitations of equipment, at least have a little bit more potential and promise behind them, which I appreciate. Flipping back to Pamela, I appreciate she's included a glute bridge variation of sorts. A glute bridge versus a hip thrust. Essentially, glute bridge is typically done on the floor, a hip thrust is typically done on an elevated surface. And yes, we do have like this single leg glute bridge hold, which I do appreciate, but again, a little bit more creativity where she maybe utilize something like a chair or a bench or something along those lines that you may have lingering around the house might have been a bit nicer, might have made the workout just that little bit more effective. The other thing you'll note with Pamela is that we have no squat patterns or anything. We have a lot of these kind of samey kind of glute movements, which are fine. I understand this is a very much glute dominant workout, but squats are still okay for the glutes. They still work the glutes in their length and position, which of all these movements we're seeing, we don't have any of that. So it would have been quite nice. And yeah, in fairness, it brings in other muscles too, like the quads. Clearly that's not an issue considering she's attempting to do a hamstring curl, which is definitely not a glute movement, it's a hamstring movement. This one maybe not so much because it's poorly done and not very effective, but the principle would imply it's intended to be a hamstring movement. And flip back to Caroline, near the end of the workout, we do have a squat pattern, which is fantastic. A slightly wider stance, which you don't have to do. A lot of people adopt this wide stance, think it's more glutes. Not necessarily. It's probably going to bring a lot more of the adductors, which are your inner thigh muscles, down here. But she, again, is including a squat pattern, which again, will bring in more of the quads, but will also bring the glutes in more of a lengthened position, which is quite nice because you're looking at both shortened and lengthened throughout this workout. Sure, you don't need to. It's probably not that deep for most people. Don't worry about it. But I'm just saying it is quite nice to look at placing emphasis on certain muscles at different lengths. So we do have this RDL kind of sumo squat thing here, which I appreciate the consideration, the thought, like the RDL is a hip hinge motion, but without any weight, it's really not going to do a lot. With some weight, fantastic movement. Not just for the hamstrings, but also for the glutes as well and the lower back. But without weight, you're not really achieving a mass amount. That being said, I do understand this is a bodyweight workout with no additional resistance. I respect it, I understand it. I'm just saying, be realistic with your expectations, and sometimes certain movements can be made exponentially better just by adding some resistance, even just a band. So throughout this, you'll identify that we've seen a few maybe less favourable movements selected by Pamela, and some by Caroline as well, and maybe a few more positive traits more displayed by Caroline's workouts over Pamela's. And the difference between the two, although both of them are actually very successful and popular, Pamela's actually a lot more popular on YouTube than Caroline is. In my opinion, Caroline's workouts are a little bit more considered and a little bit more understood from the context of hypertrophy, which is building muscle, which when you are doing these workouts at home is going to be a primary desired outcome of that, because in doing these workouts, you probably want to achieve a couple of things, which is to hopefully build a little bit of muscle, which in turn links to getting stronger as well, and maybe even also burn a few calories. Both of these will obviously achieve some caloric expenditure due to movement, but Caroline's is going to be far more effective when it comes to building muscle, and arguably far more challenging too, which means Pamela's may be better suited to beginners if you have done no activity before, but in all honesty, I'd probably say crack on with Caroline's from the get-go, because it's not going to be massively intense and strenuous, and someone's going to pipe up saying, oh, this is the hardest workout in the world, Harry, I dare you to do it. Honestly, you severely underestimate my capacity and my capabilities. I've done this for many years, and I lift many kilos and many a weight. You probably don't know that because I don't like to display that on YouTube. And someone's also going to pipe out, oh, you can't compare these two workouts because their exact minute length is not the same. Stop it. Behave yourself. It's not that deep. I'm just trying to give an analysis between maybe not so great, maybe a little bit better. That's all it is. But again, like with all my videos, this is simply my opinion, and I'd love to hear yours in the comment section below. So let me know, who do you favour, Pamela or Caroline? Until the next one, thank you for tolerating me, thank you for tolerating the waffle, and thank you for tolerating the video.